Olivia Hastings lived in a world where appearances were everything. To outsiders, she and Mark had the perfect life. A big house in the suburbs, luxury cars parked in the driveway, and a marriage that seemed unshakable. Mark was a powerful attorney, whose clients ranged from corporate magnates to high-profile criminals. Olivia played the role of the perfect wife, hosting elegant dinner parties, and being the arm candy at Mark's professional events. But beneath the polished exterior, Olivia was suffocating. Mark had become distant over the years. His once fiery passion for her had been replaced by long hours at the office, cold indifference, and a schedule that barely allowed time for a meaningful conversation. Olivia's loneliness grew more unbearable each day, her cries for attention falling on deaf ears. She was a shadow in her own home, a trophy wife in a world of glass, beautiful but fragile. Liam wasn't part of Olivia's world. He was just a delivery boy. A college student trying to make ends meet, Liam worked for a high-end grocery service that delivered gourmet meals and expensive wines to wealthy households. The first time Olivia laid eyes on him, he was just a blur, young, carefree, with a glimmer in his eyes that spoke of adventure. But over time, their interactions grew more frequent, more personal. Liam would linger at her doorstep, always with a smile and a compliment. He noticed her in ways that Mark no longer did. He asked about her day, commented on how beautiful she looked, and joked about the small details no one else seemed to care about. It wasn't long before those doorstep conversations turned into something more. One evening, as the sun set over their immaculate backyard, Liam's hand accidentally brushed against hers while handing her a package. The touch was electric. Olivia felt a surge of emotion she hadn't felt in years. A week later, they shared a glass of wine at the kitchen counter after Mark had left for yet another business trip. Olivia had always told herself she wasn't the kind of woman who would cheat. But with Liam, everything felt different. He wasn't just a distraction. He was a reminder of the life she had once wanted, a life full of passion, excitement, and spontaneity. That evening, Olivia crossed a line she could never uncross. The affair began with small stolen moments, kisses in dark corners, rushed encounters when Mark was away. It was a thrill, a secret world that only she and Liam shared. Olivia felt alive again, like she was reclaiming the parts of herself that had been buried under years of domestic monotony. But as the affair deepened, so did the danger. Liam, for all his charm and youth, wasn't satisfied with being just a lover. He wanted more. He wanted Olivia to leave Mark, to start a new life with him, free from the shadows. Olivia resisted. Leaving Mark wasn't an option. Her entire life was built around his wealth, his status, his connections. Without Mark, she was nothing more than a woman with no real income, no career, no identity outside of her marriage. But Liam was persistent. He would text her at all hours, asking when she was finally going to be his, reminding her of the life they could have together. The pressure mounted until one night, during a heated argument, Liam suggested something Olivia had never imagined. What if Mark wasn't in the picture anymore? The question hung in the air, heavy and dangerous. Olivia laughed it off at first, thinking it was just a joke, but Liam's face was deadly serious. He started talking about ways to make Mark disappear, a car accident, a robbery gone wrong. He even suggested poisoning him slowly, making it look like a health issue. The more he talked, the more Olivia realized he wasn't joking. But instead of being horrified, a small, dark part of her started to wonder if it could work. If Mark were gone, she wouldn't have to choose. She could have Liam and the money, the house, the life she had built. In the weeks that followed, Olivia found herself walking a dangerous line between fantasy and reality. She continued the affair with Liam, but her mind was consumed by the idea of getting rid of Mark. She started doing research, reading articles about unsolved murders and mysterious disappearances. She even found herself staring at Mark late at night, wondering how easy it would be to simply make him vanish. Then, one night, the plan took shape. Mark had come home late, as usual, grumbling about a tough case he was working on. Olivia smiled and nodded, pretending to listen, but her mind was elsewhere. That evening, she had mixed a little extra into his glass of whiskey, a powerful sedative that Liam had gotten from a friend. Within minutes, Mark was asleep, slumped over in his armchair. It was time. Liam was waiting outside in his delivery van, just as they had planned. He crept into the house, careful not to make a sound. Together, they carried Mark's unconscious body to the garage and loaded him into the back of the van. The plan was simple: drive Mark out to a remote location, stage a car crash, and make it look like he had died in a tragic accident. No one would ever suspect foul play, and Olivia would be free. But things didn't go as smoothly as they had hoped. As they were driving through the dark, winding roads, Mark began to stir. The sedative hadn't worked as long as they had anticipated. Groggy and confused, Mark woke up, realizing something was terribly wrong. A struggle ensued in the back of the van, with Mark thrashing against the restraining restraints. In a panic, Liam grabbed a wrench from the toolbox and, without thinking, struck Mark across the head. The sound of the impact echoed in the small space, and then there was silence. Olivia screamed, her heart pounding in her chest. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. Mark was supposed to die in an accident, not like this. But now, there was no turning back. The night felt endless as Olivia and Liam sat in the van, both frozen in shock. Mark's lifeless body lay slumped in the back, blood slowly pooling around his head where the wrench had struck. Olivia's mind raced, replaying the moment over and over again. This wasn't part of the plan. It was supposed to look like an accident, but now they were staring at the brutal reality of what they had done, a reality that had murder written all over it. Liam's hands were shaking as he gripped the steering wheel, his knuckles white. He had been so sure, so confident that they could pull this off. But now, with Mark dead in the back of his van, all his bravado had vanished. "What do we do now?" he whispered, barely able to keep his voice steady. Olivia's heart was pounding in her ears. "We stick to the plan," she said, more to convince herself than Liam. But even as the words left her lips, she knew it was a lie. The plan was ruined. They couldn't stage this as an accident anymore. There was no way to explain the blunt force trauma, no way to hide the truth of what had happened. But they had to try. Liam nodded, swallowing hard. They drove in silence, the air thick with panic. Olivia tried to focus on what they needed to do next, but her thoughts kept drifting back to Mark. She had wanted him gone, yes, but not like this, not with his blood on her hands. She pushed the guilt down, reminding herself that this was the only way out. They were in too deep to back out now. They arrived at the remote location Liam had scouted earlier, a stretch of highway that cut through a dense forest with no streetlights and hardly any traffic. It was perfect for staging the accident they had planned. Liam pulled the van over and they worked quickly, dragging Mark's body into the driver's seat of his own car, which they had towed behind the van. Olivia wiped down the van to remove any traces of their fingerprints, while Liam set up the scene to make it look like Mark had veered off the road and crashed into a tree. The entire time, Olivia's heart hammered in her chest. Every sound, every rustle in the trees felt like a police siren in the distance. When they were finally done, they stood back and stared at the wreck. It looked convincing enough, but Olivia couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong, something they hadn't accounted for. They drove back to Olivia's house in silence, both too shaken to speak. By the time they arrived, the sun was just beginning to rise, casting an eerie glow over the quiet neighborhood. Olivia felt a strange sense of finality as she walked back into her home. The house was empty, cold. Mark would never walk through the front door again. She had gotten what she wanted, freedom, but instead of feeling relieved, she felt hollow. The next morning, the news broke. Local attorney Mark Hastings found dead in a tragic car accident. The headlines read, "The initial reports were exactly what Olivia had hoped for. The police believed it was a straightforward accident. Mark must have fallen asleep at the wheel or lost control of the car. It seemed for a brief moment that they had gotten away with it. But then the question started. Detective Elliot Carter, a seasoned investigator with a reputation for being thorough, was assigned to the case. At first, he had no reason to suspect foul play. Mark's death appeared to be nothing more than a tragic accident. But as he combed through the details, something didn't sit right. For one, the crash seemed unusually clean. The damage to the car wasn't as severe as he would have expected, given the speed at which Mark supposedly crashed. And then there was the blood. The autopsy revealed that Mark's head injury wasn't consistent with a car crash. It was far too focused, too precise. The coroner noted that the wound looked more like a blunt force trauma caused by a heavy object rather than the impact of a crash. Detective Carter's instincts kicked in. This wasn't an accident, it was murder, death. It didn't take long for Carter to put the pieces together. There were no skid marks on the road, no sign that Mark had tried to stop the car before the crash. And the blunt force trauma? It was clearly the result of a deliberate act. He suspected Olivia and Liam were involved, but he needed proof. Carter's breakthrough came when he obtained surveillance footage from a gas station near the crash site. It showed Liam's van driving past just minutes after the time of the supposed accident. It was the final nail in the coffin. He knew Liam and Olivia had staged the crash, and now he had the evidence to prove it. The day Olivia and Liam were arrested was surreal. Olivia had been sipping coffee in her pristine kitchen, still playing the role of the grieving widow when the police knocked on her door. Her heart sank as she saw Carter standing there, handcuffs in hand. She didn't resist as they took her away, but inside, she was screaming. How had it all gone so wrong? Liam, too, was arrested at his apartment. He broke down almost immediately, confessing to everything in a desperate attempt to save himself. But it was too late. They were both charged with conspiracy to commit murder murder and first-degree homicide. The investigation had come to a close, but for Olivia and Liam, their nightmare was just beginning. The trial loomed ahead, and with it, the certainty that their lives were about to unravel completely. The courtroom was packed on the first day of the trial, a hushed tension hanging in the air. Olivia Hastings sat at the defendant's table, her once carefully crafted facade crumbling beneath the weight of reality. She had transformed from the picture-perfect wife to a woman facing serious charges, conspiracy to commit murder and first-degree homicide. Her long, carefully styled hair now felt heavy, and the designer dress she wore seemed to constrict her, a constant reminder of the life she had lost. Across the room, Detective Elliot Carter sat in the gallery, a satisfied smile creeping across his face as he prepared to present the evidence that would lay bare the sordid details of Mark Hastings' death. He had followed every lead, piecing together a puzzle that Olivia and her lover had believed they could hide. Today, he would expose their lies, one layer at a time. Next, the prosecution played the surveillance footage from the gas station, showing Liam's delivery van driving past just minutes after the accident. The footage painted a picture that was impossible to ignore. Two lovers entangled in a deadly plot, their greed and desperation leading to an unforgivable crime. When it was Olivia's turn to take the stand, she could feel the weight of 1,000 eyes upon her. As she faced the jury, she struggled to maintain her composure. She started with her rehearsed narrative, the grieving wife, devastated by the loss of her husband, desperately trying to piece together what had happened that fateful night. But the questions from the prosecution pierced through her story like arrows. "Is it true that you had an affair with the defendant, Liam Moore?" the prosecutor asked, leaning forward with intensity. Olivia hesitated, the truth hanging in the air like a guillotine waiting to fall. "We were close," she managed, the words feeling foreign on her tongue. "Close? You were having an affair," the prosecutor pressed. "Didn't he tell you that Mark's death would free you both?" In that moment, the dam broke. Olivia felt her carefully constructed narrative collapsing. "Yes, but I never wanted this. I loved Mark. We had a life together." The jury watched as her facade cracked, the lies unraveling around her. Olivia realized the depths of her delusions. Her love for Mark had withered under the weight of her own unhappiness, twisted into a fantasy of escape that had led to this moment. As the days wore on, the evidence against her mounted. The prosecution called witnesses from her past, friends who testified to Olivia's cold demeanor after Mark's death, who spoke of her conversations with Liam, her dreams of a life without Mark. Each revelation dug deeper, each revelation revealing layers of betrayal and treachery. The defense tried to paint a different picture. They argued that Olivia had been manipulated by Liam, that she had been the innocent victim of a young man's obsession. They attempted to show that Olivia was merely a pawn in Liam's game, a woman caught up in a dangerous affair that spiraled out of control. But as the trial progressed, Olivia realized that this defense was a double-edged sword. If she played the victim, it implied that she had been weak, that she had let someone else control her fate. The thought nauseated her. Liam's testimony came next, and as he stepped onto the stand, Olivia's heart raced. He looked different, haggard and weary, a stark contrast to the charming young man who had once swept her off her feet. His eyes avoided hers, guilt etched across his face. "Tell the court what happened that night," the prosecutor urged. Liam's voice trembled as he spoke, recounting the events in vivid detail. He described how they had discussed Mark, how their fantasies had turned into a chilling reality. "I didn't mean for it to go that far," he said, tears streaming down his cheeks. "I loved Olivia, but I was scared. I didn't know what else to do." Olivia's heart sank further as Liam spoke. She had hoped he would defend her, claim they had acted together in some twisted way, but instead, he painted her as a willing accomplice, someone who had eagerly participated in their dark scheme. The betrayal cut deeper than any wound, exposing the fragile truth of their affair. As the gavel slammed down, the courtroom fell into a stunned silence. Olivia Anderson stood before the judge, her heart racing as she faced the consequences of her actions. She had committed the unthinkable, and now the weight of her choices bore down on her. The judge pronounced her sentence, 25 years in a state prison, a grim reality that felt like a death sentence for the woman who had once tasted the sweetness of freedom and love. Tears streamed down Olivia's face as she listened to the judge's words. "You have betrayed not only your husband, but also the sanctity of life itself. Your actions were premeditated and cruel, and they will not go unpunished." With every word, Olivia felt her world crumble further. She thought of Mark, who lay dead because of her. The thrill of her affair affair with Liam faded into nothingness, replaced by an overwhelming sense of loss and regret. As the bailiff stepped forward to escort her away, Olivia took one last glance at the gallery where Liam sat. Their eyes met for a brief, poignant moment. In that instant, she saw not the charming delivery boy who had swept her off her feet, but a lost soul, broken, regretful, and unrecognizable. He had once been her escape from a suffocating marriage, but now he was the reason she stood shackled in despair. Their love, once filled with passion and dreams of a new life, had turned into a haunting reminder of the choices that had led her to this dark place. Outside the courtroom, the sun shone brightly, illuminating the world she could no longer be part of. As Olivia was led away, the contrast between the vibrant life outside and her own bleak future felt like a cruel joke. The whispers of freedom she had chased so desperately now echoed in her mind, mingled with the sharp pangs of regret. She had wanted to break free, to live her life on her own terms, but in the end, she had only succeeded in binding herself in chains. The trial had revealed every sordid detail of her affair, the moments of passion that had turned into a cold-hearted crime. Liam had also faced the court, charged as an accessory to the crime. The jury had heard how he had encouraged Olivia's dark desires, whispering sweet promises of escape while feeding her fantasies of a life without Mark. When his sentence was announced, he was given a reduced term of 5 years, a consequence of his cooperation with the prosecution. Yet even that felt like a cruel twist of fate. As Olivia walked away from the courtroom, the cacophony of the outside world faded into a muffled roar. She felt hollow, stripped of her identity and the dreams she once held dear. The thrill of love had turned into the agony of loss, and she realized that she was the architect of her own destruction. In her quest for freedom, she had forfeited everything that truly mattered. Life lessons from Olivia's story. Olivia's journey serves as a stark reminder of the consequences of our choices. In the pursuit of fleeting desires, we may find ourselves on a path that leads to devastation. Here are the key takeaways from her tragic story. 1. Every choice has consequences. The decisions we make, however small they may seem, can lead to life-altering outcomes. It's crucial to think carefully before acting on impulse. 2. Love should never be a justification for harm. Seeking love and happiness does not justify harming others. True love should bring joy, not destruction. 3. Communication is key. Instead of seeking solace in betrayal, open communication with partners can often lead to resolution and healing. The thrill is temporary. The excitement of an affair can be intoxicating, but it often leads to irreversible consequences. 5. Regret is a heavy burden. Living with the weight of regret can shatter lives. It's essential to prioritize choices that will not lead to lifelong remorse. As you reflect on Olivia's story, remember that every decision shapes your future. Choose wisely and don't let fleeting moments of passion blind you to the realities of life. As the shadows of betrayal and regret envelop each gripping tale, I want you to know that every crime story I share holds a deeper truth. After each narrative, I unveil essential life lessons that resonate beyond the darkness. Together, we'll explore the choices that lead to devastation and the wisdom gained from them. Stay tuned, because within the drama and suspense lies the chance to learn, reflect, and grow. Your journey to understanding starts here, and I invite you to join me in discovering the invaluable lessons hidden in every story. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you never miss a moment of this enlightening experience. If you found Olivia's journey compelling, please like and subscribe for more gripping tales that explore the depths of human emotion and the complexities of relationships. Your support helps us share these important lessons with others.